Okay.
Were you going to do an introduction?
Yes. Well, we're getting a
Okay.
couple people joining in. Awesome. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at our next business success webinar. I see a couple people starting to join. Welcome. Today we have a very special guest. We have Lisa Novak, who is with the IRS, and we'll be talking about how to file uh, this year's taxes. So if you're filing for your business or individual, you'll want to hear the entire presentation today. It is being recorded, so if you happen to miss a portion of it, we'll email it out to you in our post-event email. As well, any questions that you may have, enter them in the chat. We'll also be sharing Lisa's contact information in our post-event email following the webinar today. So feel free to raise your hand or enter them in the chat if you have any immediate questions uh, during the presentation. But with that, I'd like to welcome in Lisa, who will be doing the presentation today, and appreciate the support, Lisa. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot, Elizabeth. So good morning, everyone. On behalf of the IRS, I wanted to thank the Arizona Hispanic Chamber for inviting me to speak with you today. As she said, my name is Lisa Novak. I'm with the Internal Revenue Service, and as it shows on the slide, I'm with the Communications and Liaison Division, and I'm a stakeholder liaison. I've been with the IRS for almost 34 years now. I started out as a tax auditor, and I've been in education and outreach for about 17 years now, I think. Um, so that's just a little bit of background on myself. I just hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and that everyone's ready to file their tax returns this year. You know, filing season did kick off last Friday. It was a little late, but it is up and running for everyone now. So I wanted to share some information and resources with you today so that you're ready to file, and so that you know what some of the changes were that might affect your tax return. So I have a kind of a hodgepodge of information to share with you today. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so this slide shows you, this is a screenshot from one of our pages, and we actually, every year around November, we put out a news release about steps that you can take now to get a jump on your taxes. And so these were things that we were hoping that people would kind of take a look at the end of last year to get ready for right now. And just to kind of give you an idea of what's new and what you need to think about. The view your account online, I'm going to briefly discuss that a little bit later, so I'm not going to go into that right now, but that is something that you might want to look into. Gathering your tax records. So you want to make sure you have your records organized to make preparing that return easier. It might also help you discover some potentially overlooked deductions or credits or something along those lines. A couple other things that you might want to think about. So if you've had an address change, that's one of the things throughout the year that you want to notify IRS about. I think we saw how important that could be when they sent out those checks, because if they didn't have direct deposit, then they sent the checks by mail. And then if you changed your address, of course, you wouldn't have gotten that. So it would have delayed some of that. So that's one of those things that you want to think about if you move, is change your address with the IRS. Also, if you have a legal name change, maybe you got married or divorced, you want to make sure you notify the Social Security Administration of that name change, because that could kind of mess with the processing of your return if your name doesn't match anymore. Check your individual tax identification number. So that's, if anybody has an ITIN or knows somebody that has an ITIN, they used to be good forever, and now they do expire, especially if the ITIN has not been used on a federal tax return at least once in the last 3 years. But they do kind of expire on a rolling basis, so that might be something that people want to check into. You want to make sure that you've had enough tax withheld throughout the year, or you want to make sure you've paid estimated tax payments. You know, our system is a pay-as-you-go system, so there is an expectation to be have that tax paid kind of along the way. So I'm going to talk about some other resources that you can use. But we do recommend, especially if you are an employee, to check your withholding at least at the beginning of the year, and then if there's any life changes or anything along those lines. But we do have a withholding estimator that you can go in and use to see if you need to adjust your withholding or put in a new W-4. What's new and what to consider when you file in 2021. So the rebate credit, we're going to discuss more in depth in just a moment. So I'm not going to go into that right now. The refund interest payments, you know, if you received a federal tax refund last year, you might have been paid some interest because any payment that they made after April 15th, they did pay interest on. Now those payments are taxable, and so they have to be reported on your 2020 federal income tax return. So in January, the IRS was supposed to have sent a 1099 INT, and this would be to anyone who receives interest totaling at least $10. So if you received less than $10 in interest, you won't receive one of those forms. And then finally, refund timing. And this is just kind of a reminder that IRS wanted to put out to everybody. You know, they generally issue refunds in less than about 21 days, but the IRS wanted to caution everyone not to rely on receiving that refund by a certain date. So, you know, you think, oh, I can file right now and in 2 weeks I'll have that money so I can go out and make that purchase, or I can pay this bill off or something along those lines. You know, some returns do require additional review, and they might take longer before we can issue that refund. So just kind of keep that in mind and don't count on that money appearing magically within that 2-week period. Okay, hopefully you've stayed plugged into all the coronavirus tax relief information and our page on irs.gov. This is where we've tried to post the most recent information. So it would include things like updates on the tax relief, information about notice updates, even information related to IRS operations and services, because that's been a big question for people. You know, why haven't they cashed my check? Why haven't they answered my letter? You know, we've had some very serious backlogs due to COVID-19, the pandemic, social distancing. We're still experiencing some pains from that, and we don't have full staffing at this point. So I do encourage you to take a look at the links on these pages, and the links are live in the PowerPoint. So when you get a copy of that, you will be able to go to those links. Okay, so this is the screenshot of that coronavirus tax relief page that I was just telling you about. You'll notice that it has some specific information there on the left for both individuals, and then businesses and tax exempt entities are in the middle there. So this is actually a screenshot of the middle of that page. So let's look at some of the individual information that's available right there on the left. If you click on, you can see the economic impact payments, People First Initiative, the refund interest payments that I already talked to you about, and the tax treatment of unemployment benefits. And that hopefully won't surprise a lot of people. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the economic impact payments and the rebate or the recovery rebate credits, and kind of talk to you about what the difference is between the two of those. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the first and second economic impact payments and the notices that you should receive, as well as where the recovery rebate credit comes into play with the EIPs, and then talk about a couple of tools that you could use to look into those payments. All right, I think everybody kind of already knows how much the payments were supposed to be. So for the first economic impact payment, each individual was eligible to receive up to $1,200. And so if there was a married filing joint couple, they would get up to $2,400. And if you had a qualifying child under the age of 17 at the end of the taxable year, and they used either the 2018 or the 2019 return, depending on which one had been filed at the time they sent the payment. But if you had that qualifying child, you would have received an additional $500 for each qualifying child. And that again is up to that amount. For the second economic payment, people were eligible to receive up to $600 or $1,200 for a married couple. And then for the qualifying children under 17, an additional $600 for each qualifying child. Now, I kept saying that you were eligible for up to a certain amount. And that's because the payments were reduced if your adjusted gross income went over certain amounts that are shown on the slide there, depending on your filing status. And so your payment may not have been the $600 or the $1,200, or so this might be why you didn't get the full amount. But there could also be other reasons as well. Now, the notices after the first payment, the notice 1444 was mailed within about 2 weeks. This told you the amount of the payment, the date the payment was made, and then also how it was made. Was it direct deposit, or was it mailed to you? And so that should have given you an idea of whether you got the payment correctly or not. And if you didn't, then you would contact the IRS about that. Now, the second payment, there is the notice 1444B that's supposed to be sent out to everyone. As far as I know, it hasn't been sent yet. They have not updated the website to show that it was sent out to anybody. And I don't remember, I don't think my son got his yet. If anybody has gotten it, let me know, but I don't think that they've sent it out yet. One of the reasons they're sending those notices, not only to let you know that the payment was made, but also so that you have record of how much your payment was in case you need to include the information on your return in order to recover the rest of the payment that you should have gotten. So you do want to keep those notices with your tax records. We won't be able to reissue them, but I will talk to you in a few minutes about how to find out the amount of payment if you don't have the notice any longer. Excuse me. Okay, so you might be wondering if that economic impact payment would be includable in income, and the answer is no. So it is not taxable, so you do not have to include it on your tax return. Another question we got was whether payments would affect eligibility for federal government assistance or benefit programs, and the answer to that would be no as well. It was not supposed to impact those programs. There's also no provision in the law that would require individuals who qualify for a payment to pay back all or part of the payment if they look at their 2020 return and they no longer qualify for that amount. Because they were issuing these payments based on either your 2018 or your 2019 tax return that you had filed, there was no way to tell whether 2020 was going to be the same or more or less or anything like that. So they just went ahead and sent you the payments. Okay, so the first and second payment that were sent were what they call advanced payments of this recovery rebate credit. So the economic impact payment is the term that we used for the money that was paid to people in 2020 and in early 2021. Now, when it comes to the tax return for 2020, you're going to see the term recovery rebate credit, and that is the same program. Okay, it's just two different ways of receiving the money. So if you received the economic impact payments and everything was fine, you got your entire amount, then you won't have to address the recovery rebate credit on your return at all. And that's what it says here on the next slide. You don't have to report the payments. You don't have to do any kind of fancy calculations or anything. So you just continue on filing your return as you normally would. So who would be able to then claim the recovery rebate credit? So if you're eligible for the payments and you did not receive the full amounts, you're going to be able to claim the recovery rebate credit on your 2020 tax return. So this might include like someone that was supposed to get a payment, but for some reason they didn't receive it at all. It might also include someone whose income was maybe higher in 2018 or 2019. And so they would have been past those income thresholds. So the IRS wouldn't have issued either the first or maybe the second economic impact payment. But if the income for 2020 is then lower, and they are eligible for the credit based on their 2020 return, then they can claim that recovery rebate credit when they file their return. Okay, so here are a couple of questions that we get a lot from people. So people ask, well, what about a child that was born, adopted, or placed into foster care in 2020? And so the answer to that is that, the economic impact payment that the parents got in 2020 didn't include an additional amount for those children because the payment was based on only information on their 2019 or 2018 return, and those children would not have appeared on those returns. So they wouldn't have gotten the money for them. However, if they meet the other eligibility requirements, they can claim that child on their return and also get the additional amount for the recovery rebate credit. So there still is a way to get the payment for that. Another question we got a lot of was whether college students who were claimed as dependents on their parents' return in 2018 or 2019 could get the recovery rebate credit. So in this circumstance, they were claimed in 2018 or 2019, but for 2020, they're on their own. They are not going to be claimed as a dependent on their parents' return or anyone else's return. And so if that is the case, and they meet the eligibility requirements, then they will be able to claim the recovery rebate credit, and they'll be able to get both, assuming they're single, they'll be able to get both the $1,200 amount and the $600 amount as the recovery rebate credit when they file their tax return. Now, there is a worksheet that's available. So if you do your return by paper, which hopefully you don't do, I really want to encourage people to electronically file their return and also elect direct deposit, because we see how important it is, when they sent these payments out. If we had direct deposit information on file for everyone, we were able to get those payments out much more quickly to those folks to get that money into their accounts right away. Whereas if we didn't have that information and we had to issue paper checks or debit cards, it took a little bit longer to get those payments out to people. So that's kind of my plug for electronic filing, and hopefully you'll do that. But if you are paper filing, there is the Recovery Rebate Credit worksheet in the instructions for the 1040 if you want to find out more information about that. Okay, so I mentioned those notices, and some people may not have kept those notices, and when you go to apply for the Recovery Rebate Credit, because you didn't get the full amount, but maybe you don't remember how much you got, you can actually go into irs.gov and click on View Your Account, and it's going to give you information about, well, one of the things you can get information about is the payments that you received. So you can access it from the irs.gov homepage and also through this URL, irs.gov/account. All right, so just kind of a little bit of a caveat here. Before you can just go in and access that information, you're going to need to register for an online account. We need to do this because we need to verify your identity so that no one else can access the IRS online account. So it takes about 15 minutes to register. This slide shows you some of the information that you're going to need before you sit down to do the registration so that you can be prepared. One of the biggest issues for some people is some people don't have credit cards or mortgage loans or car payments or things like that. And so they have a little bit more of a difficult time registering for this. And part of the reason for that request is because we work off of the credit companies. And so that's where the information, where we can confirm your identity, basically. Okay, so once you get past all that secure access, you will be able to view your tax account. So you can see the first and second economic impact payments that were issued. And so they will have the amounts on there. And so you'll be able to complete that worksheet or the information in electronic filing. But you can also see information from your most recent tax return. You can see your tax payment history, and if you have any other payments coming up, or you can also look at your balance details by the year. And then in some cases, if you receive a notice from the IRS, you might be able to see a digital copy of certain notices. They haven't gotten them all up online yet, but that is one of the options. And so we will continue to add information that you can use this View Your Account application for. All right, another tool that is available on irs.gov that was helpful for these economic impact payments is called Get My Payment. This would allow individuals to check the status of both of the first and second economic impact payment. On here, the status, though, would only include the date of the payment and the method. So whether it was direct deposit or whether it was mailed. So it doesn't include the payment amount, unfortunately. So you're not going to be able to use it to determine how much you received, but you can actually verify that you did receive the amounts. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the mailed payments required more processing time and mailing time. The data on this is only updated once per day, and it's usually overnight. So there were people that were accessing it multiple times a day and nothing was changing, and that's because nothing was updated at the time. All right, and there is a page full of frequently asked questions about the Get My Payment. We also have tons of questions and answers on irs.gov about the economic impact payments and who's eligible and what happens in this situation or with this situation. So if you've got some very specific questions and you're not sure about the answer, I would refer you to the FAQs for the economic impact payments as well. We do have an overwhelming amount of information on irs.gov about these payments. Okay, and so one of the things we wanted to do was remind you to watch out for scams related to these economic impact payments. The scammers are out there very heavily. And so we wanted to just remind you that the IRS does not send emails or text messages. We don't do business that way, first of all, because it's not a secure way to do business. But we're also not going to ask you to open an attachment. We're not going to ask you to visit a website. We're not going to ask you to share any of your personal information in that way. The time, if you get a phone call from IRS, we would have already sent you a letter, and you would know that there was some issue that we were going to try to contact you about. So one of these emails or text messages, be sure not to fall for it. So some of the scammers use email or phone calls or text messages. There was a text scam in November of last year, and it actually could still be happening. A lot of times they recycle these scams and maybe make a little bit of a change to it. So basically the thief's goal is to trick people into revealing their bank account information under the guise of receiving that economic impact payment. So here's how it would work. So somebody would get a text message saying that they received a direct deposit of $1,200 from COVID-19 Treasury Fund. And then they tell you that further action is required to accept this payment. Continue here to accept this payment. And it would include a link to a phishing web address. So the fake link appears to come from a state agency or a relief organization, but it'll take you to a fake site that looks like the irs.gov Get My Payment website. If you visit that fake website and you enter your personal and financial account information, you've just given it to the scammers and they can access it. So if you do receive a message like this, so if you get a text message, you can take a screenshot and send it in an email to phishing@irs.gov. Just make sure you include like the date, time zone, and the phone number that received the text message. Otherwise, if you just get like a phishing email, you can go ahead and send that to phishing@irs.gov as well. We tried to stay on top of what's going on out there, so that'll be helpful to us if you share that information with us. Okay, I briefly mentioned this earlier about unemployment compensation, but this year, some folks might have received unemployment comp for the first time in their lives just because of the pandemic. So we were trying to get the message out to make sure that everybody knows that unemployment compensation is taxable. So hopefully most people knew and most opted to have taxes withheld from their payments, but some people might be surprised when they file their tax returns. So hopefully nobody out there will be surprised about this if you did receive some of the unemployment compensation. So the states normally report the amounts received on a Form 1099-G, but some states only make that amount available online, or that form available online, and they don't mail them out. But I believe Arizona sends those out in the mail to everybody. And so when you get this 1099-G, you're going to report the income on the Form 1040 line 25B. We do have more information on employment benefits available in Pub 525. Okay, so back to that coronavirus tax relief page. In the middle, you'll see the links for business and tax exempt entities. So I wanted to just kind of go over some of this information that's available. They have a link for the employer tax credits. There's a COVID-19 business tax relief tool. And then there was also a link because some of the filing and payment deadlines had changed last year. Nothing has changed at this point for this year. So I'm just going to kind of go over the first two bullets with you right now. All right, so, a lot of businesses might have been severely impacted by the pandemic. So some of them might qualify for some new employer tax credits. So if you have employees, this might apply to you. There's the credit for sick and family leave, and then there's also the employee retention credit. So under the credit for sick and family leave, if you've got an employee who's unable to work, including doing telework because of the coronavirus quarantine, or maybe they're self-quarantining, or maybe they have some symptoms and they're seeking a medical diagnosis, they were entitled to paid sick leave for up to 10 days or up to 80 hours at their regular rate of pay. And so it would have been a maximum of up to $511 per day, but no more than $5,110 in total. Now, an employee who's unable to work due to caring for someone else with coronavirus, or maybe caring for a child because the child's school or place of care was closed, they would be entitled to paid sick leave for up to 2 weeks, which would be up to 80 hours, but it would be at 2/3 of their regular rate of pay, or up to $200 per day, no more than $2,000 in total. And then finally, there was the care for children due to daycare or school closure. Now, if you had an employee who was unable to work because of the need to care for a child whose school or place of care is closed due to COVID-19, they were also entitled to paid family and medical leave equal to 2/3 of their regular pay, up to $200 per day, and $10,000 in total. So this would be for up to 10 weeks of qualifying leave that could be counted towards the family leave credit. So the employer is going to receive the credit when they're filing their employment tax returns. And there is also a way to get the advanced credit if you didn't have the funds to do that. Previously, the period of time covered was between April 1st and December 31st of 2020, but there was some legislation at the end of last year that extended this to March 31st. Okay, and then next, the employee retention credit. And this is where eligible employers could get a refundable tax credit equal to 50%, which is now 70% because of the new legislation, of up to $10,000 in qualified wages. And qualified wages also include health plan expenses. And so, of course, these were paid after March 12th of 2020 and before January 1st of 2021, which has now been changed to June 30th. So an eligible employer would be a business with operations that have been partially or fully suspended due to governmental orders because of COVID-19, or even businesses that just had a significant decline in gross receipts compared to 2019. So the refundable credit is capped at $5,000. It's now $7,000 based on the legislation. So it's $7,000 per employee, and it would apply against the employment taxes on wages paid to all employees. So that link that I showed you on the coronavirus tax relief page is where you can go to get additional information on the employee retention credit. There's also the COVID-19 business tax relief tool. So this is going to help you determine if your business is likely to qualify for one or more of the tax relief options that are available. Okay, now this is not part of the coronavirus tax relief, but I did want to throw this in there. This was a tweet that we recently issued just to remind people about the work opportunity tax credit. So if you are looking to hire employees, you might want to look into this credit and what it can do for you. So it's available to employers who hire individuals from certain targeted groups. And these people would have consistently faced some pretty significant barriers to employment. So the targeted groups would include like qualified veterans, as the slide shows. Also, it would include an ex-felon, or maybe what's called a designated community resident. This would be someone who is at least 18 and under 40, and they would live within like an empowerment zone or what's called an enterprise community or a renewal community. So there's about 10 different categories, I think. People that are on SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So take a look at this if you are thinking about hiring employees, and you might be able to benefit and also help out one of these individuals as well. Okay, so something else that's new for 2021, we did some changes to what's called the IP PIN program. It's the Identity Protection PIN. So they've expanded on who can have a PIN. So what is this? Well, the IP PIN is really kind of like I think it's 6-digit number. Whereas if you're a confirmed victim of tax-related identity theft, so if someone stole your social security number and filed a return in your name, and you've been working with the IRS and we've resolved your account, we usually mail you a new IP PIN each year. Now, starting in 2021, if you're concerned that someone might do this and you want to head off any potential problems, you can voluntarily opt into this IP PIN program as a proactive way to protect yourself from tax-related identity theft. So even though you're still going to use your social security number on the return, this IP PIN is kind of like a multi-factor authentication thing, because IRS is not going to accept a return if you're supposed to have an IP PIN with it. So if you want to opt in, you do have to pass that rigorous identity verification process, similar to what I talked to you about in Secure Access. But you can go to get an IP PIN and look at the qualifications for that. And it is up and running right now. Okay, so electronic payments. Earlier I mentioned the benefits of electronic filing. So now I wanted to go over some of the benefits of electronic payments and electronic refunds. As the slides shows, it's safe and it's much faster way of making the payments and getting your refund. So we've got a lot of different electronic payment options that people might not be aware of. So if you are going to owe when you file your return, or even if you have to make estimated tax payments, here's some options that you might want to consider. There's electronic funds withdrawal. Of course, that's where you can schedule your balance due payment and up to 4 estimated payments when you e-file your return. And these would be automatically withdrawn from your account on the due date. So it makes it easy for you if you want to kind of file now and pay later. You can use the electronic funds withdrawal at the time of filing. Another option is what's called direct pay. And this would allow you to schedule a payment up to 365 days in advance for your 1040, and also for like estimated taxes, but you would use your checking or savings account. You could also use this for like an installment agreement or something like that. So this one is really easy to use. I've helped some friends with this, and you just go in there and basically put in some basic information, your social security number, your bank account information, what kind of tax you're paying, and boom, so it literally takes less than 2 minutes to be able to go in and do that. So that's a great option for you. We do also accept credit and debit cards or digital wallets, but these can be paid through one of the what they call payment providers. So there's a list on irs.gov that shows you who the payment providers would be. But just be aware that there is a convenience fee charged to be able to use one of these cards. It's not the IRS's fee, it's charged by the provider for that service. We also have the electronic federal tax payment system. So these are the ACH transactions, or automated clearinghouse transactions, from your checking or savings account. Now, this program does require an enrollment prior to making payments. But you can go to eftps.gov to get some additional information. And then finally, we do have an option to pay cash if you're so inclined to do that. If you just prefer to not use your account or something along those lines. I think a lot of times I'll kind of let you in on some inside information. A lot of times people say, well, I don't want the IRS to have my bank account information. Well, we usually have that anyway. But B, if you send us a check, we'll have that information anyway, regardless of, whether it's an online thing or not. But a lot of people do prefer just to pay cash. So we have a program called Pay Near Me. And so we've partnered with some providers to accept cash payments. And so there are 7-Elevens throughout the country that accept these payments, Ace Cash Express, and Casey's General Store. So it's available at over 26,000 locations in 49 states, as well as Puerto Rico, but it's not available in Alaska. So we've got several different options there for you. Electronic refunds, again, it is safer and faster. And this year we've really seen how much safer and faster they are, in addition to some of the other benefits. So, as I mentioned, one of the benefits that we received this year was that taxpayers who had the direct deposit information on file were able to receive their information or their payments quicker since we had their bank account information. But here's some of the other benefits. It is much faster than paper checks. It can't be lost or destroyed because it's going right to your account. So it won't go uncashed. It's easier to locate when a refund trace is initiated. So if it didn't get into your account, then we would be able to find out why it didn't. So those are just some things to consider when determining whether to do direct deposit. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight some additional resources. And for those of you who prefer your information in Spanish, I wanted to share some of that information as well. So this slide shows you how you can convert the information on irs.gov to Spanish by using the drop-down menu and selecting the requested language. So you can see on the left where that drop-down menu is, where it says English, and it gives you the option for Espanol and then several other languages. So once you click on Espanol, it's going to automatically change it over to the Spanish language, and you can see what that looks like. All right, so the IRS right now has been focusing on enhancing the experience of all taxpayers, and this includes people with limited English proficiency. So we're establishing a long-term multilingual strategy. So we're going to take additional steps to offer more materials in more languages. So we have made some pretty significant strides recently in getting some of these products out. And so you'll see on the slide some of the information that we've made available in Spanish for the first time this year. So the 1040 and some of the schedules and the instructions are going to be available. There is a new schedule LEP, which is going to allow taxpayers to select their preferred language to receive written communication from the IRS. That's going to be offered in Spanish as well. And then we're going to be trying to make other products available in Spanish and other languages as our resources allow us to do that, because it's not really quite in our budget yet. So we've been trying to find some creative ways to meet those needs for people. Okay, so this is another resource that you might want to take a look at. This is publication 5136, IRS Services Guide. And so it's got a whole bunch of, you can see, I just took a screenshot of the top of the publication. But if you need help with, and then here's where to find it on irs.gov, and it's got a whole list of different things that you might be looking for. And so we can kind of hone you in on where you need to be for that information. So this guide is also available in Spanish. And then the Get Ready to File campaign, as I said, you know, we usually issue that around November. But this is something that you might want to take a look at to make sure that you've kind of got those steps covered when you get ready to file. And again, so this publication is available in both English and Spanish. And then we also want to make sure that you're connecting with the IRS. So if you have a social media account and you're not already filing the IRS, we do encourage you to do so. You know, you don't know what you don't know. And so this is kind of a quick way to keep an eye out for any new information that we might issue throughout the year that would impact you as either an individual or maybe a small business. So you might learn something if you follow us. And again, you know, you just scroll past it if it's something that you don't think is of interest, but if you think it'll be interesting to you or will impact you in some way, you can just click on that. We've also got several YouTube channels, and we've got videos available in English, Spanish, and American Sign Language. They're, you know, important messaging and short, informative videos. So this slide shows you, you know, we're on Instagram, Twitter, we're on Facebook. We've got several different accounts within each platform. So take a look at those, and if you haven't already signed up for it, I do encourage you to do so. Another thing you might not know is that we do webinars for small businesses and we offer them for free. So take a look at this web page, maybe bookmark it. I do try to send out invitations for these webinars, and so I would normally send them through the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and then they can share them with you. But you can always keep an eye on this to see if anything's coming up. You can go in and do the search over there. You can see the search box on the right. You could just put in keyword webinars and you'll find a link to the webinars for small businesses. Okay. Okay, and so one of the other things that I wanted to mention is I wanted to invite you to join us for one of our upcoming virtual events, and we're holding it on May 6th. This workshop is for multicultural small business owners or the organizations and associations who do business with them. So we're calling it Hearing All Voices. And this one is, we're doing a bunch of them across the country, but this one's open to businesses in Arizona, New Mexico, and Southern California. So we're calling it a workshop and a listening session. So we're going to cover some information that small businesses might want to know about, about their taxes, what happens when you interact with the IRS if there's an examination or if you're in collection, employment tax type issues. You'll hear about appealing decisions and things like that. You'll also hear about the Taxpayer First Act, and this is going to be the option for you to give your input on how the IRS can improve our services. And so we're taking a good hard look at this and trying to make the experience a little bit easier for taxpayers. So this is your opportunity to go in and let your voice be heard about various things. As I said, the most important part of this is it's a listening session. So we do want to hear from you about issues or concerns or areas that you think you might need more information, or really anything else you'd like to share. We just ask that you be nice when you do that. So the information on the slide shows you that you want to send an email to that email address shown. You'll want to include like your name and your email address and your phone number. Make sure that you put in the subject line that you're wanting the Hearing All Voices on May 6th. And that's the registration for that. So hopefully you'll join us for that. Okay, and then finally, I just wanted to bring this to your attention. We do have some e-newsletter subscriptions available. If you go to irs.gov/subscribe, one that you might be interested in would be the e-news for small business. I think this comes out about once a month, and it highlights some of the different headliners and news releases and things like that that we've put out that would be relevant for small businesses. Also some individual stuff in there. The other option is if you wanted to send me an email and get on my distribution list, I've been sending out kind of a compilation of everything that has happened in the last month that might be relevant to you as well. So you're welcome to send me an email and ask to be put on that list. And I do not have my final slide with my email address on it. So I'm going to give that to you real quick. And Elizabeth, I think if you're still around, if you will put it in the chat, that might be helpful for people as well. I know you said you're going to send it in an email later, but let me give it to you right now. It is Lisa, Lisa .a.novack at irs.gov. And that is all I have for now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. I'm ready to file my taxes now.
Oh, good.
I did get a question over email, so appreciate all the questions that are going to start coming in. We have a couple minutes for that. Let me pull up the question here. And this person's asking that their significant other was furloughed for 4 months. Is there anything different that they'll need to do? Should the spouse receive a special tax form from the state?
Okay, so they were furloughed. Did they receive unemployment compensation?
It doesn't say. I'm assuming yes.
Okay, because they will then need to report the unemployment compensation. But I'm not aware that there would be anything else related to the furlough. Just that their income would probably be less when they report it for 2020.
Okay.
If there's anything more to that question that I'm missing out on, please let me know.
Awesome. We have a question here in the chat. if a business is closing due to COVID, how do they close their EIN number in IRS?
Okay, so we do have a complete section on irs.gov on closing your business. So if you go into irs.gov and do the keyword search for closing a business, it'll take you to that information and more that you'll need to know about shutting down your business and filing your final tax return.
Great. We still have a couple more minutes here for questions. I do have a question for you, Lisa. I know when we were first chatting about putting on the webinar, you mentioned that there's somewhere in the IRS website where you could go in and file your taxes for free. Can you maybe explain a little bit about that?
Yes. And yeah, I'm sorry about that. I just noticed that there was a slide missing from this presentation that I used, and I had added some slides. So the Free File program is one of the things that I wanted to share with you. Let me real quickly back up though. Earned income tax credit was one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because there are some people that might be eligible for the earned income tax credit that were never eligible for this before. So working families with 3 or more qualifying children could be eligible for up to like $6,600 in this credit. So this is going to be something that people want to take a look at. For tax year 2020, the unemployment payments and other unearned income received could affect the amount of earned income that a worker can claim. So you want to take a look at this. There's some new rules for the earned income tax credit. But if you're looking for a way to file your taxes for free, we do have the IRS Free File program. And this is a private and public partnership that we've got between the IRS and many of the tax preparation and filing software industries. They provide their branding products for free based on your income level. So there's actually 2 ways depending on your income level. So the first one is the traditional IRS Free File, where you can do free online tax preparation. And so they've got, online filing option as well. So if your adjusted gross income is $72,000 or less, you would qualify to use the IRS Free File Partner offers and electronically file your return that way. The other option, if you make more than $72,000, is what's called Free File Fillable Forms, and I dare you to say that 3 times fast. So these are electronic federal tax forms that you can fill out and file online for free. So it's not involving software. You're going to have to have some basic knowledge about what you're doing on filling out that return. Now, as an aside, there's 1 or 2 of these Free File partners that do allow you to free file your federal return regardless of your income level, but you just have to pay for your state return. So I'd still encourage you to go to irs.gov, even if your AGI is over 72,000, and see what the qualifications are for some of these, because you still might be able to use some of them and file for free. But it'll automatically generate your state for you too. So sometimes it'd be worth it for that. We also have the IRS's VITA program, which is volunteer income tax assistance. And then there's tax counseling for the elderly. And so these programs offer free basic tax return preparation if you're qualified. So this would be people who generally make less than $57,000, or they have some disabilities or limited English speaking taxpayers who need assistance preparing their own returns. Now, this year it's a little different just because of the pandemic. Some sites aren't open. Some sites are doing things a little differently. So you can always go on irs.gov and take a look at that information about VITA. And those were the other things that I wanted to cover with you at this point. Also, just wanted to make sure that you take a look at some of our information on identity theft and data security, because it's very important to make sure that you're keeping your personally identifiable information safe, as well as if you have your customer or client information, you'll want to make sure you're keeping that safe as well. And that's all I have on that.
Wonderful. All good information. I do see one last question. Are any offices open to go into? I'm assuming any IRS offices.
Yeah, so the offices are open at limited capacity and limited in what services they will offer right now. You can go on irs.gov and you can search for your local office, or just do a search for local office, and it'll have a list of which offices are open, what services they're currently offering, and what their hours are. Now, they're still appointment only, and that's, they were like that pre-pandemic, so you're going to have to make an appointment before you go in. So that information will be available online as well, on what number to call for that.
Wonderful. Good to know. All right. So I think that was it as far as questions. We will share all this good information that Lisa provided today, her contact information, in our post-event email. So be on the lookout for that, along with the link to the full recording of today's presentation. But with that, I'd like to wrap it up. Lisa, thank you so much again. Great information as always. And we look forward to working with you in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, and I'm sorry for running over.
No worries. Thank you. Have a good day.